Whether you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
Well, there was no way I was going to let you off the hook for this one, buddy. No chance. How are you, Mike?
Still sleeping off the turkey.
Are you? How was Thanksgiving, man?
It was good.
Yeah?
It was good weekend. Yeah, got a
What are
ton
you?
of snow
What
here.
is?
Broke out
What
the
is your
snowblower.
responsibilities for Thanksgiving? Like, just stay out of the kitchen, or?
No, well, actually, we did. We actually went out to a big place for Thanksgiving dinner with my mom. We didn't want her. She would insist on cooking at home. She's 94. She doesn't need to be doing that. So, so we all went out. So all I had in my end.
So instead of saying, you know what, I'll cook for you, Mom. Let's go out to eat. I like your style,
Listen,
man.
I would do it, but I'm in Wisconsin, and all my brothers and sisters would whine about driving up to Wisconsin for the day. So we don't even go there.
Wow. I can't say I don't blame you one bit. So I probably would have done the same thing, to be honest with you, for sure. Like whatever's more convenient, especially when it gets a little hectic. But good. I'm glad everything went well though. Food was good. Family's good.
Everything went good.
Yeah.
Everything was good. Yeah, great.
Well, I'm surprised we're not. There was a year not too long ago where we had the Mosconi Cup during Thanksgiving. Was there not, or am I mistaken? Or was it right after?
No, there was. It was 2000 and was it? Yeah, it was,
or last year too, wasn't it?
Well, last year started the day after Thanksgiving, and Emily was like, "I didn't make the same mistake twice about doing it on Thanksgiving." I'm like, well, the day after Thanksgiving is essentially Thanksgiving. I mean, as far as people making travel decisions and things like that, it's just funny. But then, 2 years before that was when they did it on Thanksgiving, and that was just kind of
Nothing says Happy Thanksgiving like going and seeing some pool. You know what I mean? So let's just be real. So it's like watching the Lions lose, watching the Cowboys usually lose as part of Thanksgiving tradition, and then it's watching the Mosconi Cup right around the same time.
Yeah, look at the Cowboys this year. They stepping up.
You know what, Mike? I saw your post about selling some tickets to a Packers-Bears game, and one of these years I want to go with you. Like I want to. I don't know what I gotta buy some warm clothes, but I want to make that trip and go to Uncle Mike, man.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to go up there. It's always fun going up to Green Bay for the game at Lambeau. It's just fun up there. Although, I hate this flex schedule crap at the end of the year. So they moved it was supposed to be a noon game, which is why I was excited about going. Be sunny out, whatever. Even if it's cold, at least it's light. Moved it to 3:30. So, like, by the middle of the first quarter, it's going to be dark, and temperature will drop about 15 degrees. It'll probably be about 15 degrees.
That's brutal, man.
And dark. Yeah.
By the way, the God's Green says, "Look at the Bears this season." I think they got first round loss written all over them, but that's just me. That's just
Listen, they got to get there still. They have the rest of their schedule is Green Bay, Detroit. They do get Cleveland, although Cleveland's got a great defense. They don't score any points, but they got a really good defense. Yeah. So the Bears can win. They got to win 2 out of their last 5 to get into the playoffs, I think, because they're at 9-3 now. So
they're sitting pretty good, and no one's like separating themselves except for the Rams, which they lost yesterday.
So big game against the Packers. Always a big game against Packers, but this one's got a little more meaning to it. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's been like the first time in some years that it's had some meaning to it, because the Bears are usually pretty mediocre around this time of year, or they're like the spoilers this time of year. So we'll see what happens. Listen, it's always interesting whenever you get outdoor stadium and football come this time of year. So
we'll be out in the parking lot in Lambeau and grilling bratwurst and doing all that Green Bay stuff and drinking beer with their shirts off, and that's what they do.
Man, see, that's why I wanted to go pregame with Uncle Mike. So next year, Mike, count me in. I'm gonna make the flight up there. But in the meantime, Mike, we got the Mosconi Cup on deck. Also, there's some
Yeah.
stuff going on in Spain as well, which I don't think we're going to get a whole chance to get too deep into. But I do want to mention the fact that our girl Savannah in the finals of another world championship, Mike, out there in Spain, man.
It'd be nice to see, Sophia won last year. It'd be nice to see Savannah win a world championship this year. That would be great. That would be great. Yeah, we had three American juniors in the semifinals. So it was, good for them.
Matt says Google Mosconi stats. Yeah, I've been to that website, and it's interesting because that's where I got a lot of like the last 5 year stuff when I was kind of breaking down all the players, Matt. And I kind of want to jump into player by player, Mike, which we're going to do here in a moment. But beforehand, what's your thoughts on the pregame, Mike? Europeans been together for a few years already. A lot of guys are in the chat saying 100% chance Team Europe dumps this year. Can't say I can go that far. Although if there was a year to dump, this would be the year to dump, But I don't think they get together for 2 weeks in advance to go and dump now.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it's always been known that the Europe take it more seriously than Team USA does. And Team USA will dispute that, and they'll say they get together, and they practice hard, and they really try, and yada, yada, yada. But you don't see the effort put into it like you do with the Europeans. Although we saw it twice before in the U.S., happened to be 2018 and 2019. Oh, by the way, we won both years. So, there's something to be said for it, but it has to be structured and with purpose, and which is one of my issues, playing captain things. I don't think you can really do it that way with playing captains, although the closest you could probably come would be Jason, because he's been through it so many times, and he's kind of that role type of guy anyways.
Yeah.
So he comes pretty close to being able to measure up to that. But Europeans, I think that, is it going to make them play a lot better? I don't know. Is it going to make Moritz and Pius more comfortable being with the guys they're with? I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think that's the main reason Jason put this kind of time and effort into the pre-gaming, into
There's
the
some effort there,
warm-up,
Mike.
was to get them comfortable. They're still not going to know what the hell the crowd's going to be like until they walk out there, but they're going to be very comfortable with their teammates, what their teammates have in their backs, all that kind of stuff. So I think that was a smart move on his part. He's probably still favored a lot, even if he doesn't. If they go up the day before, they're probably still the favorite. But they're going to be there and ready to go.
It looks like it, Mike. And for all the shit that I'll give Jason for his lack of performances throughout the year, you can tell that this year in particular, like he especially takes the role of being a player captain seriously. And you mentioned the fact that he doesn't want a loss being on his resume, Mike. To get pool players on the same page for 2 weeks is tough ask, especially given the time of year that it is. And so for everyone to kind of buy into this process really speaks volumes to their commitment to the cause, despite the fact that they are heavy favorites. And if you look at whatever metric you want to go and dissect the Mosconi Cup like, or individual year stats like, they're going to lead it. You know what I mean? But finding chemistry is something where you'll give the edge to the Americans. And that's something that the past 2 weeks, I'm assuming, has been made up in terms of like understanding how who's going to be more of an alpha, who's going to take the lead in certain aspects, what doubles pairings are going to work well together. I think like seeing that the Europeans bought in so much just further makes me, a little deflated in terms of like my optimism for the Americans, because it's like, listen, these are the guys who have won all, whatever it is, since 1819 or whatever it is, Mike. And then before then it's been dry, but despite all that, they're still being professional. And oh, by the way, because I keep on hearing a lot of, 1819. Back then, they were also playing one on the spot. They were also playing on buckets too back then to give the Americans a chance. So there's a lot of things that are different compared to the way the game was back then to now as well, And so, but look, it's one team is taking it more seriously. One team is the favorite. and one team I expect to do some serious damage. And there's no, and for whatever the conspiracy theorists will say in terms of like this is the year the Europeans ought to dump to keep the Mosconi Cup alive. There's no way that any of those guys go and buy in to being together for 2 weeks, Mike, to give up 40,000 and
Yeah, well, you know what? Being together 2 weeks. If I'm PSM, I'm Moritz or David Arcade, we better each walk out of there with 40,000 because being there for 2 weeks couldn't have been the cheapest, time for those guys, and they all missed playing opportunities at the international, things like that. So, they did nothing.
And Spain, Mike, because all those guys, you got to imagine Filler would have been out there in Spain as well, So, and he would have been a favorite out there in a couple of events.
Yeah, so it's if any of those guys can be happy going to next year.
No, and I think that's where like I really respect that process, and respect the commitment. And you're right. Well, there's no way to know, right? If they show up the day before, if they would still beat the Americans. I know that if they showed up the day before, I would still bet on the Europeans. But given the fact they would still be the favorite. I mean, listen, you go through preparation now. You can give the edge to the Europeans. Chemistry now, I think, is like I said, is the only one where you would have given the edge to the Americans. But given the fact they've been together, I think that's probably evened out. More so. Successes throughout the year individually, chalk it up to the Europeans because the Americans haven't done shit all year.
Yeah, we'll go through player by player. It's kind of a no-brainer when you go through player by player. You're like, okay, so these guys have these titles and these guys have these finishes, and good luck with that.
I mean, it's and then you think about the fact that they have been together for the last 2 weeks on top of that. And that's the part there where it's like, listen, I was real old school in terms of like coaching and
they're tired of each other by now, though. Maybe they can't wait to get out of away from each other.
Who do you think's that guy? Josh can be a bit much. He can be a lot to handle. Ask Larry. He'll tell you. You know what I mean? So Matt Poland says ice baths don't win cups. No, listen, preparation does, and preparation is where you go and earn titles, in my opinion. And so if you study like any great, whether it's from an individual standpoint, like in terms of tennis or team aspects or whatever, every great type of athlete will always tell you like you're going to win in terms of your preparation. How many hours you're going to put in ahead of time. And so I would have loved to have seen the Americans kind of say, you know what, Thanksgiving's great, but we can bake a turkey with our family whenever we get back. We can bake a turkey before we leave, But this week, we need everyone to go and buy in. Seeing them all kind of get together and posing for photos behind memorabilia and things like that didn't really give me a whole lot of excitement, Mike, if I'm being honest with you, for the Americans. I don't know what their practice schedule was like as a unit. It looks like they're together now because they're out there in the UK, but at the international, it didn't look like they really were in any kind of boot camp type scenario. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
at least from the outside looking in.
They stayed together and supported each other's matches and all that stuff, but I don't think there was much of a team bonding, chemistry, heavy duty practice as a team type stuff going on. So it's kind of the typical American approach. It's, listen, we can play with these guys. We're going to get together, practice. We'll do some drills. We'll all act like we're on the same page and hope for the best. Yeah.
Who's got the most pressure going into this week, Mike? You feel like between everybody?
Pressure wise, well, I feel like Jason's put a lot of pressure on himself, taking this, like tilt seriously, because he doesn't want to, be the guy who loses the Mosconi Cup. So, if you're an American fan, the hope out of that is that you get an early lead on him, you put a little pressure on him, and then Jason starts overcoaching and telling everybody what to do, and all of a sudden they get off. That's a scenario that that we've seen Jason in these situations for, between Reyes Cups and things like that. So that's what you would kind of hope for, right? If you're an American fan, that you can get into their heads a little bit and shake up their kumbaya plan, and all of a sudden Jason gets a little rattled in the captain's chair. That's what you would hope for. So we'll see. I think he's put pressure on himself. I think he likes doing that. So we'll see how he responds to it.
Yeah.
As far as the U.S., a lot of pressure on, to take some heat off of Shane, to show that he's still one of the top 2 players in the world. All that stuff. There's a fair amount of pressure on him. Those would be kind of my 2 leaders for each team as far as who's got the most pressure on them.
Look, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of Jay. I think and I don't think he'll admit it in terms of him maybe being nervous by any stretch, but like they got to go and perform. Bottom line. And if I'm thinking about ways in which the Americans can win, and I think about ways that there may be some type of holes. Look, filler wasn't the filler of 5 years ago, and I know Jason's relying a lot on that kid, and rightfully so, because they've been in that foxhole together time after time and have won a lot of championships, but they've also lost together as well, Mike, and so I think him leaning on David, Matt Poland says the Reyes Cup shot. I think Jason's the type of guy to learn from mistakes, but at the same time, he's like, it's one thing when you face some heat from the Asians, it's like, okay, you knew this could happen, right? You knew how bad, like how great they were, right? Like how strong of a unit they are. But if you start getting behind to the Americans when you were stealing, and they are stealing, it's like, man, that's a whole other different level of heat, especially playing out there in Ali Pali in front of what I expect to be a less than sold out arena. You know what I mean? And so can those fans go and turn on you? I think they can. Plus, given the fact of what I envision the attendance being like, I think that'll also play into that more of a calmer type environment that'll favor the likes of Federer and maybe even some of these other guys like a Shane, for that matter. So I do think it is on Jason. On the American side, though, Mike, I mean, yeah, I can see the Federer side of the argument, but to be honest with you, for me, it's Sky. I don't think I personally am not in love with the idea of the approach of, I'm gonna give the vote to the team. I'm gonna be really chill. I'm gonna be the good guy. We're signing things. We're not gonna go and practice during Thanksgiving. We're gonna go out there a few days before. Like, all these things are going to be things that if they go out and lose, especially lose, in a snowball type atmosphere, it's like those are things you're going to look back on and say, well, could you have done better? Could you have made more of an effort? And going back to the last 5 years or so, and especially like just in general in terms of the Mosconi Cup, everyone always hangs their hat on Sky being that MVP. We haven't seen it over the last 7 years, Mike-ish, somewhere around there. And so if you're going to embrace that captaincy role and all the turmoil that's come with being in that position, having the scapegoat of leaving it up to the other guys on the team, all these things, right? Like not having something more structured in place in terms of a regiment and practice routine and getting together. I think there's a lot of pressure on him, Mike, and I think Sky is the type of guy who usually keeps things pretty loose. But listen, if anything less than 8 is a big disappointment in my opinion, and I don't even, and I'm not too optimistic they're going to get to 8, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And listen, we've seen the kind of chill approach doesn't work. There's been one approach that works, and that's been laser focus and going in with a chip on it. That's the only time it's worked, and really believe in it and really playing it. I want to see him go to the arena in fatigues and not look at anybody and not smile at anybody and just look at the table, that type of thing. That to me is, but if they go out there and they're, consoling each other after a loss or, bad shot, whatever, it's the same old thing we've watched time and time again.
Well, yeah, but then they were still fucking around even while they were getting their asses kicked, into day 3 last year, Mike. Where it was like way out of line. And they're still
Oh,
sitting there,
we,
yelling in the background.
yeah, no, we've seen that out. So if it's that same thing again, then it's just it's just a replaying of previous years.
That's where I feel like there's pressure, Mike, because I think like this year, amongst others, like look, you needed to have a guy be the bad guy, and you needed to get everyone's ass to go and buy in. I think that, to be honest with you, like I probably would have went with the approach of, look, listen, y'all didn't earn no Thanksgiving right now, so uh, this year we're getting together ahead of time, and so um, and I'm sorry if your families don't like it. I'm sorry if you don't like it, but at the end of the day, I got a goal here, and the goal is not to go pick up 20,000. The goal is to not just play with pride, but go out there and have a good showing, which we haven't done because they've gotten thoroughly embarrassed over the last few years, and they're playing as though like or they're preparing as though it hasn't been that way, And so I would have
Yeah,
much
no,
rather have.
after every year you hear the same. We did all the right things. Take a couple goals. We missed a couple of shots. If you change that, it's 8-8. It's 9-9. It's whatever. That gets really old too. So and that's when if you convince yourself of that, then you look at really need to change. We just need to to make that extra shot, whatever. We don't need to change the whole structure, and obviously they do.
Look, I've seen them get demolished when there was structure, though, Mike, with having Double J in there. And I was there during the preparation one year where, they were doing Mighty X from morning, noon, and night. You know what I mean? And so, but that didn't seem to work either, But there were certain guys within that group, and a majority of them are still there, where you had to keep them. You had to keep them lined up. You had to keep them on a leash, And so without anybody there, and even during like doubles, right? Because they were there practicing like different combinations the year that Wolford was there. But basically it was the same team, right? And even then, like you would have Jeremy go and say, "Hey, let's get serious here," But who's gonna do that now if that's not Sky's forte, you know? And
No, it's
so
not. If it's not Sky, then you get players who aren't just going to get pissed off because other guys aren't serious, and then you start to fracture.
But nobody wants to call anybody out. Mike,
It's happened in the past too. So some of them eye roll and walk away and whatever. And so, there needs to be, real structure to what they're doing preparation wise. And I just don't think there is.
they could still just as well go out there and lose by the same score line given the amount of preparation. And maybe they would have, they wouldn't be thousands of dollars left in their pocket. Maybe that's the reason why they didn't want to get together, because I'm sure part of it was financial, knowing those guys, But at the end of the day, especially given the lack of hype, the lack of competitiveness, one team just over preparing, even though that they've had a more successful year, all these things, Mike, it's like, man, if the Americans go out there and get their asses kicked again, it is not going to be a good look. And I think there has to be some major overhaul type changes for that roster, and for those who are going to be in charge along with that, Mike. So anyway, you got anything else on this topic, Mike, or do you want to start jumping in player by player here?
We can jump into player by player. It's going to probably, just basically support everything we just talked about.
Ray, you want to come on the show tomorrow? I'm flying out to Dallas tomorrow, Mike, but I want to do a show like every day this week. I know they got the press conference and everything else, but I don't know what your availability is like, but I kind of want to bang out as many shows this week as we can, even though I'll be in Dallas.
I should be around.
All right, Mike, let's jump into a rookie to start things off with. I'm going for Team Europe here. Give me your thoughts on Pius. What is his week going to look like? What are they counting on from this kid?
Well, Pius, the way I'm kind of looking at the players, we'll go player by player, but I just, the easiest thing to do is 5 guys for the U.S. and 5 guys for Europe and count up all the titles.
Okay, well let's do that, Mike. Go ahead. I'm all ears.
Well, I mean, listen, you look at each one of them; they won something. You know, Josh won the European Open. Pete won the Hanoi Open. Moritz won the Perry Open. David won the Philippines Open. You know, Jason's the only one who didn't win a pretty decent 9. These are 9-ball titles. I'm not talking about World 8-ball, Derby City 1 pocket.
Jason's the only one who hasn't won shit, but he's also the guy who's caused the most terror for Americans over the last 8-9 years, whatever it is.
Right. That's we've talked about this before too. This is his annuity. I mean, this is
Yeah.
So you look at someone like Federer. You look at the American Federer. Still to me one of the top 2 or 3 players in the world. Didn't win a 9-ball title this past year. None. 0. Finished second to World Championship, second to U.S. Open. Okay, so that's serious stuff. But no titles. SVB, Texas. That's it. Sky, Houston Open. Thank God for Texas. Otherwise, we'd have no titles.
Hold on, Mike. You can't.
Billy,
wait. Shane's had 2 finals appearances back to back, if I'm not mistaken, as well. I think in Florida he was in the finals, and there was another.
He was Florida Open. He was Florida Open. He was second. Trying to think where else he was.
There was another one. I can't remember what it was, but there was another one.
Listen, these guys have some decent finishes, but look at Tyler had third. Semifinal UK Open. That's great. You look at all the other ones, Whirlpool Championship, 33rd. Florida Open, 33rd. U.S. Open, 33rd. Schuyler, Hanoi, 33rd. UK Open, 33rd. These are not guys who've shown, if you look at just the standard of play throughout the year, it's like here and here, right?
There's a lot of mediocrity there, Mike, and a lot of successes on the other
side. Even Jason, who has no titles, European Open 9th, UK Open 5th, Hanoi Open 9th, U.S. Open 9th. I mean, we'd kill to have someone finish 9th in most of these tournaments.
If you had an American finish 9th or have a resume like that, you'd go and build him a statue outside of Ali Pali by now,
Yeah, for sure. So just on the, you look, everything's going, where you put people into playoff thing, and this person's resume.
That's gonna get juicy, Mike. That's gonna get real juicy.
So you look at, you're in Texas. It's gonna get ugly. So if you look at the Team USA versus Team Europe, litmus this year, that would tell you that it's going to be really one-sided. Yeah, we've already got this. We said that before, buddy.
What's that? What are we missing?
No, just
JB Anthony says PS might be new to the Mosconi Cup, but he's not a rookie. Listen, there's only one standard when it comes to being a rookie, and that is the Mosconi Cup. And so that's the only thing that people will go and measure it by. But like if you're an American fan, that's the only thing you got hopes of, is the fact that he is a rookie, and Moritz, for that matter, is a rookie. Because outside of that, and by the way, those rookies, like you mentioned, listen, PS won Hanoi, which is about the rowdiest place you can go and win at outside of the Philippines Open, which, by the way, the other guy on his team just finished winning as well, so he can handle pressure and big, loud environments and chaos and all those things. Also, I know you mentioned
it's still going to be different. It's still going to be different. It's still going to be different. It's still going to be something he's not used to, or Moritz, or any of those guys. I mean,
I don't think it's going to be like it was in other years, though, Mike. If we're going based off of the atmosphere and environment, and I know I've heard on Matchroom social media, listen, we're expecting 2,000 fans. Am I just crazy, or was the last few years like 25 plus?
It was about 25. I looked at it. I looked at this year. I went through the whole seating chart, added up all the sections or whatever. So it's about, they're normally it's below 2,500. But they're supposedly sold out. I looked at it. They were pretty full up. It was better than I thought that it had sounded like. when I went up and I went through and started adding up all the empty seats. It wasn't that bad. So it's going to be a big
Wait, when did you
crowd.
look at it though? Because I looked at it a few days ago, and the first 2 days of the event, there was a lot of availability left. I mean, if you went on the ticket website and you look,
maybe about 25%.
yeah,
Maybe about not over 25%.
that's still a pretty good chunk. I mean, that's especially compared to the way that it's been, is what I'm saying.
It'll still get. It'll be loud in there. It'll be plenty loud. It'll be plenty intense. It'll be plenty. Believe me, Pius and Moritz are going to feel it that first day or so. The first couple times they walk out there, Moritz. It's not going to be nothing like Reyes Cup. So it's going to be shaky.
I'm not a buyer. Not right now, anyway. I'm not a buyer. I'm not so sure, Mike. And I hope, and I don't even want to say I'm wrong. I think it is going to be different. And I've never seen a year in which they're pushing ticket sales the way that they have. I think that'll play, even though I can find ways to where that'll play more into the Americans' favor, that'll also play into the rookies' favor as well. And the fact of the matter is that even if it does get a little rowdy, Jason and the boys can go and turn that volume knob on the crowd up and down as they please. So they can calm the crowd down when they have the rookies there. Where the Europeans are just going to be giving them the fucking business, every time they're out there, especially guys they know who are weak. And there's a lot of them who are weak on the American side. They're going to get Federer any little mistake that the Americans make is going to be just so much more magnified. And then you throw in the fact that you got guys that are basically unproven out there, Mike, because as of late they just haven't gone out there and performed. I think it brings a recipe into place where it can get bloody. Now I hope it's not bloody because I want it to be competitive. But it's there's not a whole lot of positive strings that I can go and pull on at this point, Mike, if I'm being honest with you. So
no. We go player by player too, but I'm just looking at if you look at a team in terms of what they've done this year, it's pretty one-sided.
Look, I want to jump into Tyler for a minute because that he's kind of turned into from years ago. Everyone's scratching their head thinking, what is Johan doing bringing this kid on, to being more of a staple on this team, Mike? And if you look at his break, I think in terms of the Americans, he's probably got the second best break out of all five guys out there, Mike. What's your thoughts on Tyler from Wisconsin?
You know what? He's still really confident. He's he can have good runs in him. But then you always watch Tyler in Mosconi Cup and these races to 5 where every ball counts. All of a sudden you'll see him, try some 5 railer. It just leaves you thinking, well, that's the sellout we really didn't need at this point. Yeah. So need some consistency from him. Need him to win a singles match. And play solid in doubles. Listen, he's got talent. He finished semifinals in UK Open. That was a great run for him. Beat good players. So listen, he knows how to play pool. So it's not, and he's been there a million times. So he's not going to have a lot of rattle.
Look, he can be the spark plug for the team, and they're going to need him to be a spark plug. He can be a guy where he may not be a number 1 on paper, but they need him to play like at least a number 2 or even a number 3. And I know right now he's probably number 4. But going back to that year in which they won, I mean, he started that whole overtaking of the Europeans that year of whenever he went and beat Niels, and he can play. Right. He can play big guys tough. I don't want to see Tyler. I don't want to see Tyler buy into the circus, because Tyler's a guy that part of why I really respect him is because of how how goal focused that he is and how serious that he is and the respect that he gives it. And he has a certain standard when it comes to not only his own individual play, but just from the expectations and the preparation I know you saw on Matchroom's social media, like he was the first guy in. Like that's what I expect of Tyler. Out of those 5 guys, that's the kind of standard that I expect from him. But if he doesn't buy into the circus and get too caught up in being a hype man or being a calming guy or being this or being that, just be you, be genuinely, authentically you, then that's something you can go and pull on. I think he's got a great break, Mike. He's got a European type break, does Tyler, but he's got to stay the course, because if he shifts left or right, and especially if he shows any kind of rattle, it can get bad, and it can get bad quick. And he
Yeah.
wears it. He turns about the same color as your vest there, my man. You know, um, so it's like once you see that happen, that's when you know he's in trouble. You know, um, and the other side of it is going back to just the point in general as far as the fan base. You know, the fans know that as well, and the second that they smell blood, they're gonna just hammer him over and over and over again, and just be relentless on him. But I think like if he can be true to who he is, then he'll be someone that the Americans can go and depend on, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, no, he needs to just focus on him and what he does, and not, you know, correcting other people or worrying about his, trying to take over his teammates, how they're playing, or get involved in that. He's to focus on his matches and his play.
Talk to me about the killer for a minute, Mike. He's back on the scene. He's back in Ali Pal. He's back on that European team.
Yeah, I mean, listen, hasn't had the greatest year in the world, aside from winning the European Open, but he's still Josh, and he loves this atmosphere. And when he gets out there, especially having missed a year, I expect him to be all geared up and geeked up to play again this year and prove his worth. And so he could go out there from day one and not miss a ball and not miss a match, not lose a match in the entire 4 days. But you'll see if we can, if he's the Josh that we've seen a couple times in the past year that didn't look so Joshish, then maybe you can steal 1 or 2 from him.
He hasn't been the Josh that we've known and loved over the last 5+ years. But even then, what's crazy to think about is that he still has a major, to your point, Mike, underneath his belt this year, and so I think that when you have great players like that, especially a player like Josh, a player like Shane, they look for excuses to get that much more up. And even their B game is usually better than like 99.99% everyone else's A+ game. That's the type of monster that he is. I also feel like just from his shadow, he can be intimidating because everybody knows his pedigree. And even though it hasn't been the same standard as we've seen year in and year out, I think like the aura of Josh is in a lot of guys' heads, whether they'll go and admit it or not.
Yeah.
I think one of the only guys who it doesn't really fuck with him as much is Sky, because how laid back and how good old boy that he is, and just happy go lucky. And I think that's why he plays him a little bit tougher. Tyler can play him tough too.
Tyler for a different reason.
Yeah, but those 2 guys, I'd love to see him pair up. Shane, filler's been in his head. You can go and ask him year in and year out. I think a lot of guys go and dodge trying to go and
Shane
play.
Beat him 5-0 2 years ago.
Listen, he's still in his head. Trust me, Mike. I've had a lot of conversations with Shane about Josh over the years. He's in his head a little bit, and it's a mutual level of respect, and also just like he's just a bad dude, man. He's a bad dude. I know he hasn't been there in a year. I think that'll give him more motivation. I think if he goes and scrambles a little bit or has a misstep, being comfortable and having Jason there, having a leader like David there is going to certainly play into his favor. And he's also going to be, a guy that Moritz can go and lean on as well. So I think he can play in multiple different roles. I think no matter what, I'm riding or dying that dude coming up with the big shot all day, every day. And I'm going to bet on that guy in every single match that I can because he's that proven out there on that stage. I think he's got like a 70 plus win percentage out there in his match play. Like it's something just so offensive and ridiculous. You know, it's just the clip that he can go and win. Who does that? But it's like he makes a moment special. I've seen him, whether in person or on the television, just come with big, like body blow, suck the life out of the team type shots where he'll come 2 rails with inside full table with the cue ball up against the cushion and just come with some really like filthy shot that'll just like, fuck. And then he's out, you know? So I've seen him like rip the heart and soul out of the Americans too many times. And so,
Yeah.
look, right now, if he's inspired to play, which he is, if he's getting his break figured out on like that 9-ball break figured out to a different standard, it's going to certainly play into his favor. I think he's got all the intangibles of the world. He's a leader. He's a killer for a reason, not just in his nickname, Mike. He's going to be a tough out. I expect him to have a big Mosconi Cup. And especially like if he gets rolling, he's the type of guy who he don't let up, man. Once he steps on your throat, he just squeezes
Yeah.
the life out of you,
No, he's a finisher.
That he is through and through, Mike. Switching over to the Americans once again, Mike. Let's talk about the guy who's been the talk of a lot of the fan base over the last couple of weeks. Let's talk about Billy for a minute and what you expect out of him this upcoming week.
Listen, Billy's had good Mosconi Cups for. He's won important matches. He's played hard, but those years that he's had that focus and someone had the reins on him and was really pulling him in and keeping him dialed in and keeping him focused on what he's doing and keeping him away from smoke machines and wearing stupid goggles and wearing a hat backwards and shit like that. If he pulls that kind of stuff, then just get him out of there, player. Go out there and be a pool player. Those couple of years in 18 and 19 when he was really serious about it. Every match you saw him go out there, he didn't fuck around until it was the last 9-ball. He didn't play any of those games because someone had control of him. So Skyler's his buddy. Skyler going to have that kind of control because I don't want to see the same guy we saw last year. I mean, he actually had a couple decent matches last year, but still it was not. It was just fluff. It wasn't meaningful stuff. So if he stays dialed in, he can help you with matches.
His breaks improved, which is something that they're going to be relying on heavily, and they're going to need him. Especially given the value of the lag and the limited amount of breaks you're going to go and get. That's something that, like, compared to last year or even the year prior, that I couldn't really say about his game, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think he had any kind of consistency in terms of the break. But even watching him, I know he went 2-0 at the International, but even watching a few of his matches, like, his break has improved. I'm with you in terms of, like, what that circus is and how he buys into it. I think it's just a matter of what your own maturity is individually, Mike. You know what I mean? And I just don't see it because he loves playing that role, but it's like there's a time and a place for everything. When you're getting your ass kicked year in and year out, it becomes off more cringe than it does like being inspirational and motivational. You know what I mean? And so I think they need a certain level of there has to be a different standard. I don't think he exemplifies that, but I think he can kind of keep guys loose. But then again, so can Sky. So I'm trying to figure out like where that role is going to be. The fan base, and it's going to be something I'm going to say over and over again in terms of the Americans, but especially given how volatile that he's been on social media, any little mistake, and especially given how much he's been ridiculed, they're going to fucking hammer him too. They're going to hammer him. They're going to go and mock it. They're going to go and just not let him forget it.
They should lock their phones in a safe for 4 days and no.
Well, I mean, even that as well. That's going to be its own different level of shit talking, right? Is the people that are going to be at home. Yeah. But I'm talking about just the Europeans that are going to be there in the building, Mike. Because they're going to give it to him as well, especially like him going off the way that he's been lately online and on some of the Matchroom posts, it's like now they know that they can get you engaged and riled up, and so they're just going to keep on needling you. Especially how tough those European fans can go and be, how much of dicks that they can be, and so I expect any little mistake to go and get magnified. The energy that they love him for, I think is not gonna be a value add out there because you're not gonna have your fan base there, and he's not gonna be able to keep the crowd up and down as he wanted to last year. And even then, like whenever he played, he wanted the energy down. When he wasn't playing, he wanted the energy up. It was like very yin and yang, where I think there has to be business. And I can understand if you want to pump the brakes and be more chill and be more in neutral or maybe not put forth as much effort when you have a resume. But when you don't have a resume and you haven't performed and you're going into a hostile environment, I think it's got a lot of makings for it to be really difficult for him out there. I hope he has success out there because I feel like I said, if he does slip up even a little bit, they're gonna make him remember it over and over and over again, and that's just what those European fans go and do. So we'll see. I want to talk about Moritz for a minute, Mike, because he's a guy. If I'm looking at question marks in terms of the Europeans, I got a lot of question marks, but just seeing how much that he was kind of doing a little too much in the Reyes Cup, overcoaching Federer, especially comes to mind because that's something that just continues to stay on my mind ever since I last saw him play in a team environment.
Well, Moritz, I mean, we did see Moritz at Reyes Cup look, and that's one of the things we talked about with Jason. We kept watching those guys out there at the Reyes Cup, and there'd be 4 or 5 guys out there pointing in different directions, telling him what shots he should play and the way he should do things. You just let the kid play his game and stay out of his head and let him focus and not fill his head with a bunch of extra garbage. I think he'll be fine. He's got a great temperament. He doesn't get rattled much. So I think that, he can be a real threat. But again, it's his first time out there. We'll see. We'll know after the first day or so, after those first couple games that he plays, first match that he plays, whether or not he's going to have him. But he's had a really good year.
He's had a really good year, and he's had a really good end of the year, especially.
Yeah,
he's
winning Perry, second Illinois. That's pretty good wind up to the year. Again, although he didn't look great in the Reyes Cup, he didn't look like a liability, but he didn't look great. So that's what you'd hope to get out of him here.
I don't think he didn't look like a liability until he did look like a liability when he partnered up with Federer, because and I'm sure that's something that Jason, knowing his leadership and how aware that he is, that's something that they probably addressed with him right away, and figured out where he's going to be comfortable in, what pairing he's going to be comfortable in, where he'll know his role. You know what I mean? Where I think in the Reyes Cup, it was kind of a go ahead, have fun with it, and they had no time to kind of figure any of that shit out. Who was going to be the leader? You had Double J, you had Jason, you have all these guys, right? Where I think like now he'll know where he's at in the pecking order. Individually, he's had a great fucking end of the year. He's got a lot of momentum. He's got titles. He's played in chaotic environments. He's played in expectations where he was written off. You mentioned the Perry, Mike. He tore up the Taiwanese to finish off that event. How strong is that? Beats Little Ko in the final, I believe, and with ease, I might add. So when you got a break like that, you've been under the Matchroom big lights. You've been, how the referees are going to react because you played on TV tables quite a bit, so you know how this guy reacts or that guy reacts or whatever, and how to go and make adjustments. Plus having filler there, I think like these last 2 weeks are going to serve that kid very well. And I think you're going to see a different side of him. I expect really big things. I don't expect a lot of opportunity just because of he's going to be a rookie and they're going to rely hard and heavy on Jason. But the good news is that if it does get a little thick, Mike, and it does get a little tense and tight towards the end, it's pretty good knowing if you're a European fan that you got this kid who's got that kind of moxie and bottle, as they say,
Yeah.
waiting in the wings,
I think
So
you go back to the whole filler thing with Moritz, and I think part of this 2 weeks together was a good move by Jason because, honestly, I'm not sure how great the relationship was with Moritz and Filler over the past year. So I think that, getting them back on the same page, it certainly is not Francisco and David, right?
yeah,
So I think that probably helped a lot, and will help them during the tournament for sure.
I think like even with that in mind, they 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 remind me of guys, or at least it looks like they're the type of guys who could just compartmentalize and they can be professionals, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
not they're
yeah.
not like they're not overly emotional, either one of them, and I would even say the same thing in terms of Josh's relationship with Jason, for that matter, especially given how, Jason didn't really speak up, at least publicly, as far as him not being on the team last year when everyone knew that he should have been on the team, and how
Right.
how that soured that relationship compared to what it was, because it was like, they were 1A and 1B, and you can swap them out however you want. But yeah, that part's going to be interesting to see. I still like the doubles is going to be where I think Moritz, I'm going to have a little bit of question marks, and deservedly so. But other than that, I could think of outside of Federer and Shane, I would put him as the favorite. But even with Federer and Shane, I still give him a decent puncher's chance at beating him in a singles, So to me, it's all going to come down to how he performs in those doubles. And again, the fans, I think, are just going to make it as, calm and collected as possible. I don't want to see him get too involved in that circus, though, because that doesn't strike me as his strong suit. I don't want him to be too focused on, engaging in this and that. Play your game, man. Go out there and play your game. You prepared for 2 weeks. Go out there and handle your business. But don't forget to win, because all these successes and achievements and praise and all these things, they'll come after you win. But you got to go and win first. That's something the Americans seem to forget, especially as of late. Switching over to the Americans, Mike, talk about the captain for a minute. How do you like Sky right now?
Listen, Sky's had a lot of success in Mosconi Cup. Not as much in recent years, although all European players still kind of look at him as being the,
they respect
toughest Mosconi out on the American team. So he's got that going for him, and he's fearless, and he's not going to get rattled. There's no rattle in him. So but he's got the double duty thing of being captain again. What's that? No rattle in him.
You say no rattle in him. I'm thinking about that bridge shot at
oh yeah, last year, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and there's been a couple other ones that just are not coming to mind right now.
Yeah, a couple of shots he didn't do too well, but in general, he doesn't, that arena doesn't bother him much. But he's got the double duty of being the captain, and he knows how to do things differently than he did last year. So he's got a thing to do this year if he wants a different result. And, we don't know how that's going over with everybody. So as far as his matches, how much is it going to take off his matches that he's got all this other stuff on his plate when he's preparing for the next match, when he's preparing for his singles match, when he's preparing for a doubles match, things like that. So, they need him to be in control. They need him to be, one of their top point earners for sure. So he goes out there with that kind of pressure and those expectations. He's got to win them, singles matches. I think if he plays 3, you got to win 2 of them, depending on how far the thing goes. He's got to win a doubles. He's got to get 4 points, 3-4 points over the first 3 days for sure, for them to even be in the discussion.
You said all the right things, Mike, and you're right. And it's going to be tough because that's a lot of different that's a lot of different voids to go and fill. That's a lot of different hats to go and wear, and I think that's where like one of the many things that I've loved about Sky in this environment, and sometimes to a fault, is his demeanor. But I liked his demeanor when he didn't have all those extra responsibilities, because
Right.
I felt like that when you put him with those extra responsibilities, then he wasn't that same free and loose guy, because he was too worried about this or too worried about that, and having to focus on over coaching this guy or not babying this guy or not giving a fuck. And then what's that going to look like? And just being real. Listen, going back to the Reyes Cup, listen, that doesn't give you any hope in terms of the leader that he is naturally. He was a guy that went out there on the stage while they're getting their ass kicked, bringing up the phone to Federer, and showing them that and thinking that was a good look, So like his judgment is off, and that's their leader. That's their leader, But if he cannot have that way on him, if I'm thinking about recent form, I got a lot of optimism for his recent form, Mike. And playing Yap the way that he did out there at the international. And again, I know it's on 4.5-inch pockets, different environment, all those things. But like we talk about momentum in terms of Moritz, Sky's got a lot of momentum right now, probably more momentum than any of the Americans right now.
Right.
But
Anybody on the team.
they're gonna need that though. They're gonna need that, and the problem is it's a catch-22, right? Because now he does have momentum, so you are expecting things, and if you go and lose, especially lose to like a Pius, no disrespect to Pius, but you lose to a Pius, that's a body blow to the Americans. That's a punch you may not recover from. You know what I mean? Where you want Sky to kind of be one of those fire starters. You want him to be one of the guys to take off the knees take out a Jason, take out a Josh. But if you go and lose to a rookie, that ain't gonna be a good look. And everyone's energy is just gonna be here. You know what I'm saying?
That's why the lineups over the first 2 days are going to be really interesting, because that's where you kind of set the tone emotionally for whether you feel about yourself or not.
Who are we missing on the? Have we gone to the Europeans except for Jay? Or are we missing anybody?
We didn't really talk about Pius, but
Well, we can talk about PS. Let's talk about him then.
Pius, listen, Pius, we both have loved Pius for a long time. Yeah, love his game, love his. He's a great guy.
But there's a butt coming.
Hanoi, he's huge. You know what? Listen, he finished third at the European. He finished ninth in the Philippines. He finished 17th. I mean, he was always in that top. I couldn't find much where he was beyond 17. So, he was always in there. But even in Hanoi, where he won, he had, and obviously a lot of it was in his head because he had lost in so many semifinals leading up to this, right? But his quarterfinals and semifinals, he got a little shaky at the end. He crossed the finish line both times, but the nerves caught up with him toward the end of both of those matches. He had leads that he kind of gave away, and you can see him tightening up. So he's the one on Team Europe that I could get the shakes, first on that team. So I don't wish it on him because I like the guy. That's where you would look for a chance to make someone a little nervy.
I agree with you. I thoroughly agree with you. And he's the one that if I'm expecting a crack, it's to come from him, But and I know you mentioned Hanoi. Listen, he had a great match against Carlo, but it's where like the Mosconi Cup is kind of like you're playing. It's 9-9 going to 10, right, in Hanoi, basically. But that's every match, every game, every rack is like that,
Right.
And so if you can go and stumble,
you get so opportunities. It's really, man, it really ratchets up the pressure. So, yeah, agreed.
And it's. I got some question marks. I want to see how he does out there. I know he's finishing off strong, right? And playing and winning a major out there in Hanoi is valuable to him because of the environment. And listen, we didn't expect that kind of performance out of him, if we're just being honest. Like we knew he's steady, but we didn't know he was going to go and spike the way that he did, to snap off that event in that atmosphere, that environment. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting if he does go on crack, and what that'll do to kind of everyone else. The good thing is he's got a friend in there in Moritz to kind of rally around him.
Yeah.
Jason can be a leader and kind of keep him underneath his wing. I expect that doubles pairing to go and happen in a Pius and a Jason, because Jason's the kind of guy who can keep a rookie in line and let him get comfortable. So I expect to see that matchup early. But individually though, like, and this is like, if I think you're going to see a Pius and Jason matchup, because Jason likes taking a rookie underneath his wing to get him comfortable. Is what I'm saying. I think even more than what Josh would be. But
do you think they protect him if they run the same format that they ran at Reyes? There'd be 3 singles matches over the first 2 days. Think you keep them out of singles for the first 2 days and try to get a little bit of a lead?
No, I think, can we talk strategy tomorrow? Because I'd love to go that and just frame it off of like not that I don't want to talk about it right now, because I do, but I think that's just going to open up a whole other layer. But I'd love to kind of like frame it off of the Reyes Cup if we can. And by the way, I mentioned before, Ray, if you'd like to come on, because Raymond's got a lot of good insight in terms of like strategy and all these things, we'd love to have you on, Ray. But on that question, I like throwing them out to the wolves personally. Let him go out there and get his feet wet, or better yet, just get the whole damn body wet. Jump in head first, right? Baptism by fire, as they say, and just figure out how you do. And if you lose, well, fuck it. You're only down a point or 2 point, whatever. Like, it's early on, right? And he's got time to go and get more comfortable with having guys go and build back up that lead or pad a lead for him in the back end. But I don't want to save him for a spot where he'll be really vulnerable and that much more pressure. If, let's say, you save him in the middle of it and then he's facing a lead, well, now
if you save him for day 3 and it was a critical match, then your big guys really didn't tone up day 1 or 2. You're already in kind of trouble.
Which is further going to put pressure on PS, then, is what I'm saying. Because if the big guys don't show up, then
you know how, because you get so few opportunities. We've seen players, regardless of how the team's doing, we've seen players go out there, and if they're shaky early, regardless of whether the team's doing well, they put more pressure on themselves to play. I got to play better next match, whatever, that type of thing. So, you run that risk too, because I've seen that happen with players at these, a cup before, where someone gets in their own head early on that they're not sharp. And it's
okay, but what's the flip side of it, Mike? Let's say that he goes and has a signature win where you're not going to really, like, let's say he goes and plays against Federer, right? That could go and just get everybody just, you know what I mean, ready to go and fired up. Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I mean, it could, just same way that it could slide the other way. The kid's going to have to prove how mentally strong he is in one form or fashion or another over the next few days, and I know individually it's, he's had successes, or at least been consistent, had successes in terms of Hanoi, but this is a different atmosphere. This is a different environment. This is where I feel like he might get exposed a little bit. Now, again, I hope he doesn't, because I'm a fan of PS like you are, but I just get nervous at the fact that, like, if it's really crunch time and critical, then, and then at that point, by default, you would say, well, now your leaders have not performed well. So how is that going to go and fuck with his confidence? Also, I just put him out there where it's as freeing as it possibly can be. And it's not going to be too painful. It's not going to cost you too much. 1 point at the beginning is a way different than a point when it's 9-9 or when it's 8-8 or it's
I get the
7-6.
whole point. I just think more about, you lose your singles match on day 1. Now you're not playing again until the end of day 2, or maybe you don't play. Well, you play like one doubles match day 2. You're not getting much of a chance to get off that bad taste in your mouth. It's a what if type of which way you go.
The good thing is you're playing at home, and so the fans are going to give you a break and going to give you some grace there as well, being a rookie and knowing how they're not going to make it more tough than what it has to be, and Jason having his finger on that volume button is going to be really critical, especially in those matches as well, and the thing is, though, like any fan who attends, the Mosconi Cup outside of Telford is really smart, and so they know like the moment of pull. You know what I mean? So uh, they'll know when to go and relax. They'll know when to go and put pressure, give them the oohs and the ahs and all these things, And so I expect that kind of like head game to kind of be more in his favor. But yeah, this is the Mosconi Cup though in a nutshell. It's like every little thing is under the biggest microscope, and is under the most scrutiny or success or praise and all whatever. Like it's one way or the other, and that's just the volatility that is the Mosconi Cup.
Yeah.
Switching over to the Americans, Mike, you mentioned them earlier. Let's mention them again. Federer.
Time to step up. Simple. Time to step up. Time to be America's Jason. Time to go out there and say, I'm never going to lose another Mosconi Cup match. That he's got to, they can't, he doesn't need to carry the team, but he needs to win.
He doesn't need to carry that team.
If he, Sky, and Shane, who all have the ability, take care of their own business, then it's not on anybody's shoulders. Right?
Who's everybody looking up to, though, Mike?
I'm sorry?
Who's everybody looking up to?
Well, no, they can all look up to Federer. I mean, they should, but he doesn't have to win every point for the team. They've got guys who can win points, is what I'm saying. So, but he does have. I think he does really need to go out there. He's got to have a year where he wins 4 to 5 points. He just has to have one of those years, regardless how the rest of the team does. He needs to go out there and show that he can do that at the Mosconi Cup. Because the first 2 years has been like, man, you look a lot like Shane, buddy. so we don't.
Any other environment, that would be a massive compliment.
Except for the Mosconi Cup. In the Mosconi environment, it's you're handicapped. So he needs to go out there and step it up and see who follows him. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on him. We talked about it early on. He's got to produce. The longer he goes without producing, the more pressure there is. So
look, listen. You can't wear the crown. You can't wear the crown of being the world number one, right? And all these things and promoting yourself the way that he does, and does a great job at it. But like without having the successes out there, because out there it's different. Listen, this is not the US Open anymore. It is not the World Championships anymore. The Mosconi Cup, we grade you differently. And if you don't think so, just go look at how everyone changes come December their opinion on SVB, But at this point, when it comes to SVB, people have kind of accepted that. They think about the upside always, or at least there's some who are realists in terms of Shane. But like you don't want to end up in that same kind of category, because that's different. And I think Jason knows how to get in his head, so that's going to play into his favor. Like I mentioned about Sky earlier, like, look, you expect Federer to be your one. Like, he is the number one guy. He is the guy they all look up to. He is the guy that they have all their hopes on him. And if he goes and loses, especially loses a match where it's a 5-0, 5-1, 5-2, whatever, to a Jason or a Filler, the crowd and the atmosphere is just going to get like this, and Federer is just going to go and shrink, because we've seen that happen before, Mike. He has not performed out there, and I would still bet on him every match like I would a Josh, because I know what his upside is, but it's not even what you've done for me lately, because even whenever he was on the European team, he didn't perform. Like historically in the Mosconi Cup, the small sample size that we have of this kid being out there, whether it's been a quiet, no crowd Mosconi Cup or being in Orlando where it's rowdy, like he's been the ghost. He's disappeared, and he's got to go and be the world number one that the Americans and the American fans go and hope for. They need better out of him, and if I was Sky, I wouldn't want to see him get too, like, especially tomorrow for the press conference. I don't want to see him get engaged with Federer. because I need that guy right there. I need that dude right there in Federer to be as dialed in and as focused as he can. Federer seems to be more focused on like selling product and doing all these other things, and I don't want that if I'm on a team guy. I want everyone to be at their optimal thing. I don't want them to get mentally distracted by this or that or whatever, right? And the fans out there, like all the rest of them, they're gonna fucking hammer him. They're gonna hammer him. He makes a mistake, and Federer's going to go and start sliding a little bit because we've seen that before. Now, I'm not saying he can't put on a dominating performance and can't go and win 5-0 against a Filler or against a Jason, because he can, but we have not seen it yet, Mike. We haven't seen it out there, especially when it's important.
Show me the scoreline. Show me the scoreline. We can do it. We know that, we know Tyler can beat Filler. We know these things. We've seen these things. But on that stage, it's time to produce and put up and do the job. So to see him go to the press conference tomorrow and be the most boring 5 guys in the country.
Yeah.
Show that they're serious about what they're doing. I'd love a bunch of one-word answers. I'd love him not buying into any goading. I'd love to see him play that game.
Jason's really good at that. Jason's really good at that, Mike, especially when it comes to that.
Good at it too. I mean, she's going to try to yank a few chains too. So just don't take the bait. Just be focused and not buy into it.
He's got to go and step up, man. There's no other way to put it, and he has not. And if they want, they will live and die by how that kid goes and performs. And guess what? When you switch sides, that was always going to be the expectation, especially given your age and your successes, and given the fact of how Shane has not performed. They expect him to be the man. They expect him to be their number one. When there's a big matchup or they need a big point or whatever, they need that Federer who can go and perform and take over. And let's be honest, Mike, whether not only has he not had successes in the Mosconi Cup, anything standing out, but he's been really mediocre over the last 4 or 5 months, Mike, and not even by his standards. I mean, like, just in general, he has, he has disappeared in tournament after tournament. And even in years past where you had all this hope and expectation and optimism for him, it was like, that's when he really was genuinely the world number one. That's when he was, the world champion. He was the US Open champion. He was all these things, right? Like, he was the baddest MF on the planet, and he was, but now this year you have still not performing in the Mosconi Cup, and you haven't been doing as hot as we expect you to be individually. There's going to be a lot of eyes watching how that kid goes and performs, and I know you're always going to pick him on the team no matter what, but man, he's got to go and step up, because this is the time when it counts the most, especially for American fans. Let's talk about the captain for Team Europe, Mike. Jason. He's in a pretty good spot here, Mike. He's had the least amount of success, but in individual play, but he's got the better team. He's got the team who's more prepared. His bark is as loud as his bite is in that environment. And this is like his time of year, Mike, when it comes to Jay.
Yeah, it is. It is. And listen, he's a great player regardless. He doesn't have the resume that puts him on his team every year, except for the fact that he plays really well in the Mosconi Cup. But this is his arena. I'd like to see him put under some pressure.
That's the only chance you got. That's the only chance you got, Mike.
See what happens to his coaching, his overcoaching, his selections, his whatever. But no one's put that kind of pressure on him yet. So, we've seen him a couple times, in his earlier Mosconi Cup years, 18, 19, things like that. He was suspect when the heat was on. And we've seen him not be we saw him one day at the Reyes Cup in 2 years be Jason Shaw. The rest of the days, not so much. So, listen, there's a lot of opportunity there if you just put some heat on him.
He's a front runner. And
no doubt about it. But he's always good at getting out. He's good at getting out in front.
No, for sure he is, but he is a different player when you put some heat on him, and there are a lot of expectations, and there is a lot of pressure on him, and all those things you mentioned. I hadn't even thought about that, but you're right, because it won't even not just affect his play, but it will affect especially how he goes and manages having two rookies on the team as well, and the over analyzing, over coaching, over trying to coddle too much or whatever. Along with the responsibility of being a number two guy on your team or a number one guy, depending on how you look at it, yeah, I think that I'm going to go with history here, obviously, but if the Americans have any kind of chance, they got to go and put that heat on him, especially in the overall, because he does go and he does show some rattle in how he plays when he's got to play, and he can check out too. If he's in a deficit, he can go and check out. Now I know it's a different environment because you're gonna have your five guys. He's the orchestra leader out there. He's the man in Ali Pally. He's the man with that team. I get all those things, but you're gonna have to go and make sure you keep your foot on that throat the entire time. If you're Jason, and that's when you're gonna get like the best result out of him and out of his squad. But otherwise, it's like even if he doesn't perform good, he's still going to be kicking back because he's got guys with a lot of trophies sitting right behind him, including Josh. So he's still going to be really comfortable.
He's banking on it. He doesn't have a lot of pressure on him. I mean, he's put pressure on himself, but realistically, he's playing with a pretty stacked deck.
I mean, but this isn't like the greatest European team ever assembled like it was years ago. Let's just be honest, but even then, there's still a lot of accomplishments out there with his other four guys that are sitting right next to him. But yeah, I think the Ali Pally thing is going to be really massive in terms of his leadership and the way that handling those rookies is going to go and play. But when it comes to his play on the table, look, even if you lose to a Shane or you lose to a Federer, it don't matter because you're still going to be a massive favorite against a Billy, against a Tyler, and Sky. You're still going to be a favorite against all three of them. So and he can go and beat Shane and Federer individually as well out there in that arena because we've seen it before.
Sure.
Going back to or ending on the Americans, Mike, SVB.
Well, we didn't talk about David yet either, did we?
Oh, did we? Okay. Well, what do you want? Let's save Shane for the end then. Talk about David.
No, I'm just bringing up names. I don't know.
No, yeah. No, I didn't even think about it, but you're right.
Listen, David did what David does, and that's play well enough at the end of the year to earn your spot. David did not have a great year. If you look at all the World Championships, UK Opens, US Opens, things like that, there's a lot of 33rds in David's resume this year. So he wins the Philippines Open. It earns him the spot just by form, right? As it would have been Fran again. So, but David has shown his medal in Mosconi Cup in recent years. He's more than held up his end. We've seen him in these matches where he'll play a doubles match and it'll look shaky as shit, and then he comes next singles and you think you got him just where you want him and he plays like jam up. It's like, holy shit.
Fucking King Kong, dude.
So
I'll never forget that, man.
But David can, he can have a couple bad. We've seen him had some bad matches in Mosconi Cup too. So his consistency level is not, the best on the team. So you hope you can get a shaky David. I mean, it's like he's someplace where you have a chance in a singles match, right?
You do, but I also really admire the way that he can compartmentalize and leave it there, like leave it at that match and move on, because we've seen him before, like to your point, kind of switch places and where he looked like he showed a lot of liability and then comes out and can be the world champion in the very next match, can David. And given his role and responsibility on the team, I just trust that dude, man. I trust him in a singles. I trust him in a doubles. I trust him to be whoever it is that they need him to be. He just has his finger on the pulse, And you even saw that with him out there in the Reyes Cup. Like just the way that he would go and talk to guys and engage with guys or whatever. He's just, some guys are just leaders and you don't have to tell them to be a leader, or they don't got to get out of their normal area to be a leader.
Right.
I think David feels that out very well. I think his temperament and his energy is something that can gel well with anybody. I don't care if you're going out there with filler or if you're going out there with Pierce. I would trust David. I would trust him to get him across the finish line. At the very least, give the right direction and right coaching, and also the right amount of it as well, Mike. You know what I mean? Not trying to go and be too much of this guy or too much of that guy. He can be exactly who you need him to be.
He's a perfect complement for any team. And the thing with David is, you know, he's playing the best pool of his career. You know, the last 4 years been the best pool of David's career, and this is like from 42 to 47. So I think he's really comfortable where he is right now. He really knows his role. Alex is right. His shot selection's always really sound.
Amen to that. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
He's going to, you know, he's just going to give you what you need. He's the perfect teammate. He's become that over the years for sure.
It doesn't matter if it's like if he's up 4-0 or if he's trailing 4-1. You know, I trust his decision making, like Laley says in there, you know, and he can grind if he needs to. He gets out when he's got the open table as well. You know, it's very rare that you'll see him, and even if he does make a mistake, he doesn't let it go and just snowball on him. You know what I mean? Like you have to go and beat David, because David's not the kind of guy to go and beat himself. You know, he is so strong mentally. I love his decision making. I'm taking back to that matchup with.
Has he replaced Albin? Has he replaced Albin on Team Europe as that guy?
Listen, ain't nobody replacing Albin. Let's just be honest, Mike. Nobody's replacing Albin. No one's. But if there was a guy who would fit into that role, for sure, it would be him. He checks off all those same boxes. He's the quiet guy that you can just go and rely on. He does not go and shake or rattle. I love that the majority of the time they just so often they make the right decision. You know, and Albin, I always admire that about him as well. If you needed something big and the big shot was in their favor and in their percentages, he didn't mind taking it on, but he also didn't mind wearing you down either. And the one thing that I love about guys like that, especially given how emotional that some of the Americans can be in terms of their decision making, right? Because there's or how they can go high or low or try to go for the hero shot when you don't have to be a hero. You know, that's why I very much value what that guy goes and does. I value him in that team environment. And by the way, he's playing pretty good right now as well. You know,
would you have rather seen Fran on the team than David? If you're a U.S. fan?
If I'm a U.S.
I keep thinking about how close David came to not being on this team. And that was one misshaped 8-ball by J.B. Sukal. Otherwise, he doesn't even make the final 32 in the Philippines, and we're not even having this discussion.
I would have said yes before the Mosconi Cup, but then now hindsight's 2020 because Fran's playing pretty jam up ever since the Reyes Cup, like Mike says in the chat.
Yeah, no, he has. He's bounced back from that, hasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. And like all these things that I value David as, I would – like Fran doesn't have the leadership or experience that David has, but he can be who you need him to be as far as just being an individual player and being a role player. You know, that I value Fran at, but he is playing pretty good right now. But if I'm an American fan, despite the fact that Fran's playing really good right now, I probably would think that Fran has a little bit more rattle. I think Fran's got more upside than David, but I think Fran's got a little bit more rattle than David as well. So I probably would hope, you know. So it's tough to say, man. I mean, it ain't like before though, where you thought they were 15 guys deep like years past. You know what I mean? Because now you can have genuine discussions about some of these guys. I feel like and say yes, yay or nay, and the for what I'll give them shit of in terms of the rankings, it also does allow itself to be chaotic in terms of having rookies be a part of the European team, which for the Americans to have a chance, you got to have rookies on the European team. So, SVB, Mike, go ahead.
He's just got to stay engaged and be a team player. Regardless of how well he played, he's got to get
all
the point.
All the things that he's historically not been, we need him to be this week. Is that what you're saying?
Obviously, I mean, if something's going to change, something's got to change. So he's got that's if we get the same Shane we've gotten in recent years, then we know what to expect. So he's one of those guys who it's obvious he needs to get off to a fast start. He needs to play really well from the start, get everybody around him pumped up, get himself pumped up, get himself believing in himself. That's what he needs. So, with him, it's pretty simple because we know what we've gotten in the past 5 years. So, how do you make it different?
Look, Shane's my guy. He's your guy too. And I always want to see him do well. I do. But he hasn't. Being engaged has not been his strong suit in the Mosconi Cup, And one of the big issues with Shane is that Shane's good at relying on Shane. The problem is that everybody is relying on Shane. These other 4 guys are relying on Shane, and they go as he goes, And I know Federer's the world number 1 and all these. I get it, but Shane is still the big dog in that yard. Even though he may be the quietest guy, he's still the biggest guy in that yard, and they really rely on him to be that quiet, emotional leader. Go out there and get decent points. Win or lose, play with spirit. That's what they really need. Shane cannot go and check out this year, and especially if it gets tough early. Now, if it's out of line, then whatever. It's out of line, then that's just what we expect it to be. Whatever. I get all that too. You know what I mean? But early, I want to see Shane kind of be more of that 3 guy in terms of a leader, but be that 1 guy in terms of like the actual real emotional leader of that team. Because if he can come out with some decent wins and some strong racks, and especially not let it get away from him early like it did the last couple of years, where that I think it was a first teams match or whatever it was, where he missed the 9 ball. It's like that'll do so much for getting the other guys inspired and motivated. And look, they still may be drawn dead. They still may be hopeless, but you'll give them some hope if Shane goes and is in good spirits. And that's something that Sky's got to figure out a way to balance that out as well. And that's been like the puzzle that nobody has seemed to figure out over the years, Now, I have heard that Shane has taken more of a leadership type approach in this team as far as what the expectations are, the professionalism, things like that. If they can maintain that and Shane can stay engaged, then they're at least got a better shot at it. Shane's not the guy that's going to give you the rah, rah, rah in front of the camera. He doesn't want to go and high five when he's getting his ass kicked. He doesn't take any pride in fucking in blowing a smoke gun when he's losing 9-2. That's not what he's there for. Shane likes to fucking win. He's a fucking winner. He wants to win. Point blank and simple. And he's not happy unless he wins, And so, but the Europeans know that. If they can go and get Shane checked out, they know they got a really good chance at taking down that team, So I hope they keep the phones in the practice room. I hope they stay off of social media, especially if it gets bad. But Shane's at least got to pretend like he still believes, because the second that he doesn't believe, everybody knows he doesn't believe anymore. Everybody in that room and in that locker room knows it, whether they want to say it or they don't or whatever. And I get the reason why, and they got a lot of respect for him, all these things. And I get all that, as do I. But Shane needs to have a better standard. It seems like he does this year compared to how, knowing him over the last few years. But they go as he goes, and so Shane's going to have to just step up, Mike, for sure. Like there's not a lot of hope for the Americans. But the few that they got to really hold on to, and Shane's a big part of that.
Yeah.
You know,
you gotta believe it. You gotta hold on to it, believe it, and make sure everybody around you knows you believe it.
Do you want to give a prediction, Mike, or do you want to save it for tomorrow? We're already an hour and a half into it.
I don't want to leave on a downer.
Bang Time Pool says SVB will be just fine, just like every other year, right, my man? All right, listen, we'll have our predictions tomorrow. I want to frame going over strategy and who you're going to go and put in lineups tomorrow, Mike, as well. So you get some homework to do. I'll be flying to Dallas in the morning, but maybe around late afternoon, 2-3 o'clock. Is that all right?
I'm around. Yeah.
All right. Raymond, you're in tomorrow. You guys come hang out with us. We're going to have more Mosconi Cup talk. Big thanks to all the sponsors. Thanks to Mike for hanging out for an hour and a half. I don't know how we've been having these long shows, but I've enjoyed it.